Hi, my name is Jenelle Riley. I'm an editor at Variety, and welcome to this SAG-AFTRA Foundation conversation at home with everybody's latest obsession, normal people. Please join me in welcoming one of the stars of that show. If you're lucky, you may have caught him on stage in productions like The Great Gatsby or Angela's Ashes. Please welcome Paul Mescal. Hi, thank you so much for being here.
No, thank you for having me. I'm delighted.
You are one of those rare people who I think is having a pretty good 2020. Relatively speaking, this has been such a breakthrough year with people just falling in love with this show.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if you had written it out on paper, what would be going on kind of globally, and then being told that 2020 personally would be quite a good year, I probably would have laughed at you. But yeah, it's professionally, it's been absolutely amazing, and also kind of the world just feels like a very scary place at the moment as well. So it's all things are kind of rubbing up against each other.
I hope you're enjoying the good though, because
yes, no, definitely
in difficult times. And I'm sort of curious, how has your life changed since this show came out? Normally, I would think you'd be getting mobbed on the streets, but there are no mobs on the streets.
It's just been the craziest 8 weeks, both in terms of the response to the show, and then maybe having to slightly adjust certain kind of facets of your life and things, but generally it's just been trying to adjust to kind of the positive support that the show has kind of garnered, which I, and I'm sure everybody else who's involved with the show, is incredibly grateful for.
Positive support is you being polite. It's been overwhelming love. I see people like Jessica Chastain tweeting about the show, and specifically you. So that's got to feel good.
Yes, I'm definitely not going to complain about that.
I actually want to go back to the beginning and ask, when did you know you want to be an actor? I believe your father was an actor as well.
Yes, yeah. He kind of used to bring me to the plays that he would have been in when I was growing up. And if I'm being totally honest, it wasn't so. I really enjoyed watching him, but it wasn't a kind of light bulb moment for me being like, oh, that's the thing I want to do. It was more so I did a school musical when I was 16, and I absolutely loved it. But it's kind of one of those things that I didn't have any context, or that had no understanding that it could be a real life job. And then when it came to applying to colleges, it was kind of the only thing that seemed viable to me that I would kind of stick at for 3 years of hard work, and I'm very glad that I did.
What was the musical you did? Was it a famous one?
It was a Phantom of the Opera. Yeah, it was
no
a
biggie. Way!
Yeah.
Who were you?
I was Phantom.
You were the Phantom?
Yeah, it was pretty intense. Yeah.
That's amazing. First of all, I'm impressed that any high school is doing Phantom of the Opera.
I think we were the first. It was just when the rights came out, so I think we were one of the first schools in the UK and Ireland, definitely the first school in Ireland or any kind of amateur production to get the rights for it. So it was pretty full on.
I was so sure you were going to say Raoul, but now I'm dying to see your Phantom.
I think, yeah. Yeah.
So I know that you, as you said, you were active in college and always active in the theater. How did Normal People find its way to you? And were you already familiar with the novel by Sally Rooney?
Yeah, so after I graduated from college, I did kind of 2 years of solid theatre around Ireland, and I did a play in London as well. And I was doing a play in the Abbey at the time, and the audition sites came through. I saw it was based on, or it was an adaptation of the novel. And I'd been aware of it, but I hadn't read it. So I kind of read the novel very quickly before the first audition. And that kind of is quite a daunting thing to read, because you're seeing it in the context of playing the characters, if that makes sense. And it's both exhilarating reading it, knowing the kind of opportunity that will be afforded to any actor getting to play Conall and Marianne, and then trying to do it justice in the audition is the next job.
Was it a little eerie? Because I know, like Conall, you were a footballer and you went to Trinity College.
Yeah, there was a lot of kind of boxes ticked at that point. And it's one of those things, as an actor, you're kind of used to getting audition sites sent through, and you're like, oh, I know 10 other actors in my close vicinity will play that character better than I will. whereas with that, I didn't feel like I had a huge amount of places to hide. I think I felt like I fit the kind of the bill in terms of his background, his kind of the textures of him, and then it was just a matter of trying to go in and do it justice when we were sitting in front of Lenny and the casting directors.
Is it almost scarier or more intimidating when you feel you relate to the character more?
I think so, because it goes back to that you don't have any excuses if you don't, not necessarily that you're always going to get the things that you're right for, because there's lots of other actors who are right for it as well, but it can be a harder pill to swallow if you don't at least do yourself justice in the audition room, I think.
Had you done much auditioning for film and television?
I hadn't done a huge amount, just given the kind of way that theatre works, that you're kind of tied into things for a long period of time. But things have popped up. But that was kind of the first thing that I was properly free for, and I was right for, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. What was the audition like? I mean, was it just one? Did they end up, having chemistry reads with you and other?
Yeah, it was. There was a first audition before Christmas and a callback, and the callback was when I met Lenny for the first time. That was an amazing experience. And then
He's the greatest.
Oh, he's the greatest. And all, like, specifically, A, in general, but B, specifically in kind of those awful audition scenarios where you're terrified, he just completely puts you at ease and kind of makes you feel incredibly empowered as an actor. And we hadn't met before or anything like that, so it's just a very specific, whether it's a skill set or not, I don't know, but he's just an incredibly generous man to be in a room with, and generous with his knowledge, and also with this kind of understanding about how actors work, I think. And then there was an awful Christmas hiatus where I felt like those two auditions had gone well, and we got positive feedback from the casting director, and that's kind of, you want to stay on the momentum of that, and then that was kind of broken. But I was called back to do chemistry reads and then another set of chemistry reads. So yeah, it was a long enough process, but wasn't particularly drawn out either. Was
those chemistry reads, I assume, is when you met Daisy Egan-Jones?
Yes, I met her on in the second round of chemistry reads.
I mean, it's almost cliche to ask, but did you sort of have an instinct that she would be the one?
Yeah, no, that was an interesting, those two kind of chemistry read days were particularly interesting in the sense that I'd never been in that context before, kind of seeing 10 amazing actors come in and read or audition, and like everybody, and I'm not just saying that out of kind of courtesy, but everybody that came in could have played a version of Marianne and played it really well. But with Daisy, it did feel instinctive. It felt, and I've said it in previous interviews, that it felt like there was just less acting going on in the audition, in terms of where we both came at it together, that the lines kind of seemed to be the characters talking to each other rather than us trying to force the lines in any way.
How did you find out you got it?
I found out between the first and second chemistry read. So it had all been really positive, and we were waiting and waiting and waiting. And I was doing a workshop for a musical in London, furiously checking my phone for about a week. And I had a missed call from my agent, ran out onto the street at a 15-minute coffee break, got the call from her, screamed, roared, cried, rang my parents, and then had to go back into rehearsals. Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing.
It's pretty cool.
So you were cast before the second chemistry read, so you sort of knew they were testing people specifically to you. Yeah,
it was pretty mad.
Because you're fairly new to the professional world, especially when it comes to film and TV. Do you think you're good at auditioning? I mean, I think it's a certain art, and
yeah, definitely a ways to go with it. But I think that process really helped, because I saw lots of people audition as well, which was weird, and I saw that a lot of the time the only thing you can control is probably your preparation, and you can't really control whatever talent you have, and then it's just a matter of being open and attentive in the room and kind of hoping that you fit with the dynamic of the director and the other actors you might be reading with.
Have you had pretty good luck in the audition room in terms of, I don't know if you've had any of those nightmare scenarios where you felt you messed up or they just weren't paying attention?
I have actually been really lucky in that sense that like any auditions that haven't gone well have been down to me rather than an external event, because I've heard from like friends of mine like stuff like that has happened to them, and I imagine that's must be the most frustrating thing, because you do all your prep and then somebody's phone goes off or somebody knocks on the door or XYZ. There's a ton of permutations, but I've been lucky that anytime I've messed up, it's been my own fault. Yeah.
So we mentioned that, on the surface, it would seem you have a lot in common with Connell, but I'm sure you still had to undertake a lot of preparation, maybe even research to play this part. How did you sort of go about finding the character?
Yeah, I think normal people's all projects are specific, but in this context, I think I was really lucky that we had the book to constantly refer to, and that was kind of my main point of contact in terms of prep. It was working by myself, just kind of really plotting out and then matching the script up to the book and finding where the differences were, or because in the book you have those kind of wonderful inner monologues, whereas in the script you don't, because it doesn't dramatically work as well on screen. So you're trying to attach those monologues into your thought process for when you're going to be playing the scenes, and that took quite a bit of time and work. And then for say more set piece scenes, it was a matter of just talking. So for example, the scene with the counselor I talked to a counselor in Trinity, and I was just kind of fact checking Connell's behavior with the reality of what they may have seen. And of course it was spot on. And yeah, so that kind of thing. Any time that there was stuff like that I didn't particularly understand in terms of the world that Connell was in, I was trying to find out more information in that sense.
I'm sort of curious because I know you've done, you've worked in front of the camera before, but this is your first series lead on a show. And schools, unless, it's different there, they don't really teach like how to feel comfortable in front of a camera, where to stand, things like that.
Yeah.
Is that sort of a learning curve as well?
That is a learning curve, and I think I learned loads from watching Daisy. I loved watching her between kind of takes, or because I'm still figuring it out, but it's kind of not getting too hot, not getting too cold, just kind of staying in this nice, creative, easy space, because if you're kind of psyching yourself up or too relaxed, it can be detrimental. And it's just kind of figuring out what suits you. But that definitely, I feel like I got better at that as the shoot went on, and I feel like I might have a little idea about how I'd like to do it moving forward. But I think that's one of the things, as you said, isn't particularly taught at drama school, but it's kind of something you have to do on the job, I think.
Oh yeah, that's probably true. I just think it's so strange to go from the stage to having like a giant camera 3 feet away from your face.
Yeah, I think that's true, but I also think the fund, like, my theory is that the fundamentals are still the same. It's about prep. It's about understanding your character's background, where they are at that specific moment, and what they're trying to communicate to themselves or to the people in the scene. And I think that's the same on stage, but sometimes it's just there's slight modulations in how that is expressed, if that's in front of a camera or in front of 400 or 500, 600 people.
Normal People is also kind of unusual for a series in that you only have 2 directors, and Lenny Abrahamson directed the front half, and then changed directors, which I feel would kind of be a luxury. It almost feels like one long film or maybe 2 films.
Yeah, again, I think I have no kind of context about what it would be like if I worked with 4 directors on it, because it's obviously been my first job in this. I loved that. I think I was obviously incredibly close with Lenny, because I'd seen him through the casting process and through rehearsals and through filming. But then at that point, you're probably, what was it? We were maybe 9-10 weeks into filming. And also episodes 7 to 12 are totally different. And I think what was great is that both Lenny and Hetty really put the book and the characters at the center of how they directed. So the transition didn't feel too dramatic in that sense. And just have two directors as well who are totally actor centric and who really enjoy working with actors, I think really helped that transition as well.
Obviously, we have to talk about working with Daisy because the show doesn't work. It's really a two-hander. It doesn't work if, first of all, if you guys don't have chemistry. And I'm sort of curious, was that something that you built, or did you feel it right off the bat, like even in that first read?
Off the bat, I felt that we both had a very similar understanding of who the characters were, what they meant to each other, and how they communicated. And I think how they communicate is a very, very important thing in that relationship. But in terms of, we didn't do like kind of character building exercises or like, I just think I had an instinctive feeling, and I think Daisy felt the same in terms of an instinctive fact that we would just get on with each other, that we worked very similarly, that we were. It's hard to say when she's not here, but I think we're both very generous with each other when we're kind of off camera and on it. And it wasn't something that I ever felt like we needed to cultivate. And it was just the kind of thing that as the shoot progressed, we obviously became more familiar with each other and kind of had a shorthand on how we worked by the end of it. By the end of shooting, it was almost non-verbal in terms of how we understood the way we worked, if that makes sense.
Did you guys shoot chronologically?
No, we shot we didn't shoot. We just shot the first 6 episodes, but we were moving location all the time. And then we shot out the first 6, and then we shot out the last 6, but they weren't chronological.
I mean, you guys are doing some very intimate scenes together, and I don't just mean physically, emotionally too. Mm-hmm. And I have to imagine that you really have to have a scene partner you can trust.
Totally. And not only a scene partner, but you've also got to have a really kind of unshakable structure in terms of how the set is run for those scenes to work. And obviously, like, again, Lenny is totally, he's inherently a part of that conversation, because again, he's not going to ask me and Daisy to do anything that we're not comfortable doing, or he's not going to ask anything to be exploitive in any shape, way, or form. The same with Hetty. All of the conversations that we had in regards to both the emotional and physical intimacy always came back to the character, and he put utter trust in us to kind of be able to communicate those things however we saw fit through the conversations that we'd be having. So yeah, it definitely, in terms, me and Daisy would have to have a really strong kind of trust in each other, but also we fundamentally trusted both Lenny and Hetty all the way through, which I think really, really helped as well.
I think something that's fairly new, at least in America, just in like the last couple of years, is we've started using intimacy coordinators and intimacy directors. I don't know if you had something like that, or if it was conversations with you guys and the director.
Yeah, no, we had a wonderful intimacy coordinator. Ida O'Brien was her name, and when we were in the rehearsal period, we even did a day with her to kind of figure out how that would work on set. And Ida would be there any day that there was any form of intimacy required, and it just allowed both me and Daisy and Lenny and Hetty to be totally open and transparent in the conversation, because we knew that the physical intimacy would be looked after and kind of almost choreographed by Ida, and that she would again be kind of our advocates if we were ever feeling uncomfortable. Because like historically, I imagine those scenes would be difficult if you, as an actor, if you're a young actor and you don't feel empowered, you're not going to say no if you're uncomfortable. And that was never the situation on set. But I think it's a really positive kind of parameter, I think, to put in place for the industry moving forward. It should be the gold standard, I think.
Absolutely. I also think, again, being new to TV, like showing up for your first series, I just hope they didn't put like all the sex scenes on the first day.
No, they put it in the first week, but not in the first day, thank God. Yeah. Yeah, the first Friday we had a full day of sex scenes. And I think, to be honest, that was the best way to do it, because you don't you just be looking at that day on the call sheet being like, oh, we're doing those scenes today. But
Yep.
actually, weirdly, they were, I don't know, I think both me and Daisy felt totally empowered doing them, because they serve such an important narrative thrust in the book, and I think the same is true in the series. So it's not like you feel like the series is gratuitously cutting to a different sex scene. It's really integral to both the characters' emotional but also sexual development throughout the series.
Connell goes through a lot, I feel, especially in the back end of the series. What did end up being the most challenging scene to play, or arc even?
Yeah, I think probably episode 10 and episode 11, so like all pose different challenges, but in terms of getting to those, I think it's hard to look at them all in isolation, simply due to the fact that it's so well written that those kind of emotional climaxes in 10 and 11 are kind of drip fed to us throughout the series. Like, you see that he has a massive panic attack in the bathroom in episode 2, and the kind of incremental kind of increase in his anxiety kind of peaks that probably at 10 when he's talking to the counselor. But probably episode 10, I felt a lot of pressure around, just because I feel like it was written so well, and I was representing a reality which isn't necessarily true to me, but is true to a lot of young men that I know, or that I have friends who know. So I wanted to get that right.
Mm-hmm. It's so believable, as someone who has had panic attacks before, and it's the worst feeling in the world. I was sure you knew exactly what you were talking about.
Yeah, no, I think that's kind of where that's where there was maybe research done in terms of what that actually physically looks like, like, or trying, and through conversations with Hetty as well, and Lenny. So I felt very much in safe hands with that.
Normally I like to ask people what they're doing next, and I know we're in kind of this strange time, but I have to imagine Hollywood has come calling. You're probably having, I would assume you're having discussions, maybe meeting people. Do you know what's up next for you?
I kind of half know, and I don't think I know I'm definitely not allowed to say it, but hopefully it'll be all going well at the end of the summer, and I'd be working with people that I absolutely adore and have adored for quite a number of years. So I'd be really excited if that manages to happen, which I'm quietly positive that it is.
And I know Normal People covers, it's strange because I don't know if I should call it a limited series or a series. I'm hoping that the story might continue, so I've been calling it a series. Has there been talk of a season 2?
There's only been talk in terms of like the fact that the characters clearly live on in the imagination of the audience, but not in terms of kind of concrete production conversation. So no, I think the truthful answer is no. There's no talk as it stands today.
Well, I'm going to start the talk. And if you would be up for it.
Oh God, yeah, I'd love to play him again, but it's tricky though, because it feels like this series has captured a lot of people's imagination, and I think sometimes the mistake has been made where you rush back into something because an audience has liked it, and I think personally, if it was me calling the shots, which it definitely isn't, I would probably wait for them to enter another phase in their life, get a little bit older, and figure out what they mean to each other as they progress through their 20s, maybe late 20s. But yeah, I personally think you have to kind of let them get a little bit older before you decide to jump back into another series with them.
Okay, well, clear your schedule for 5 years from now.
Okay.
And we'll make it happen. Before we go, I want to remind everyone watching at home that for information on SAG-AFTRA Foundation's COVID-19 Relief Fund, you can look in the comments. And I'm just sort of asking people, normal people, it happened to actually, it came out at a pretty fortunate time. I think it would have been a huge hit and we would have binged it anyway at any time of the year, but it was such a great show to discover, while we're all kind of staying home. What are some of the things that have been keeping you creative, or the things you've been watching or reading?
There's been a lot of Zoom calls. In terms of, I've been doing a lot of running, and I was doing more reading than I am at the moment, kind of at the start of lockdown, and it's kind of been exercising, Zoom calls, and sleeping. So not the most exciting COVID-19 checklist, but that's the truthful answer.
No, I mean, Zoom calls are a performance in and of themselves. So.
Oh God, yeah.
Well, again, I think everyone watching this has probably already seen the show, but go check out Normal People again. All the episodes are on Hulu. I want to thank you so much for joining us, and congratulations on all the success.
No, thank you so much for having me. Thank you.
Of course.